Hi, sweet soul, and welcome back to another episode of It's All Happening. On today's show, I have invited on an incredibly special guest. He is my original podcast co-host, my best friend, and my husband. And I have been bugging him for months to join me on the show to have this conversation. But as always, the divine timing was absolutely perfect as we have found ourselves on the other side of what has felt like a year-long contraction inside of our relationship, inside of our marriage, inside of ourselves, inside of navigating the stickier, touchier, more vulnerable aspects of marriage that we believe not enough people really talk about. So today we pulled back the curtain on the last year of our marriage and some of the crunchiness we have been navigating through and how we are feeling coming out the other side of being so willing time and time and time again to open our hearts, get really raw, get really vulnerable, and face the truth of what it means to consciously grow together and consciously choose one another in relationship. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, babe.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for finally saying yes to me.
I feel like we've been trying to do this. We've been trying, and we finally found a time to sit and actually exhale and debrief a little bit on how things have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also feel like this happens a lot with guests that I'll throw out a line at a certain time and it's like, and immediately like, oh yes, of course I'd love to be on the show. But then there's like the cosmic timeline of when that actually is meant to be. And I feel like even though I've been asking you to sit down and podcast with me for probably a couple months now, this feels like
the time.
Yeah. The moment. So much has been happening inside of our lives. And I think we can bring through a really beautiful conversation about what it's taken to get ourselves here, because it hasn't been an easy journey.
Yeah. I think the divine timing is important, right? Like we've tried to come together and sit down and debrief on things, but we were in the midst of living life and moving through things and emotions. And I think that now it just feels like it feels right.
Yeah. It's something I'm coming to realize and really is really, really important as someone who's so vulnerably sharing so many parts and pieces of my life. Sometimes it feels like this immediately, like something happens and then I want to turn it into art. Something happens and I want to turn it into a conversation or a lesson or give it back out to the world. But there's this really important like incubation period of like, no, it's just mine for right now. And becoming a creator, that's been like a really deep lesson to learn, of not kind of needing immediately for everything that happens in life to turn into something that I'm gifting out to the world for as medicine. But I feel like this conversation has been a really, really long time coming.
For sure. And I think that it's important to take that time to integrate, right? Because these things are really happening in our actual lives. It's not just,
it's not just a concept, it's an experience.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like these things are really happening and we're learning to move through them and move together. And when the time is right to share it, then it'll feel that way. And I think it feels that way.
And here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
So first question.
Yep.
What does it feel like to be married to a woman whose consciousness has been completely ripped open by the divine?
It's been a journey for sure. But I think every relationship is a journey. I think, one of the big positives for me is that I learn a lot and grow a lot and experience so much like via osmosis, just like alongside you, right? You're having these experiences and we're coming together and having conversations and it's making me question like, oh, well, how does that land for me? And I think that it's caused me to look inward quite a bit more and just get really in touch with myself, and alongside helping you trying to navigate, me just showing up as like the most conscious partner that I can, So yeah, it's been a ride, but I think that, you need to choose the person that you're in relationship with. You need to choose them over and over and over again. And in choosing each other when things are difficult or they feel stressed, it ends up creating just a stronger bond for the two of us, of like meeting an obstacle and then overcoming it. And then that's kind of just like another tool in our toolbox for like the next time something comes up. It's like, oh, we've been here before. We know what this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the process of all of life, that expansion and contraction. And we've been through quite a few contractions together, and contractions where we had moments of like, is this what it's supposed to feel like?
Mm-hmm.
And are we actually meant to do this together? And are we going to make it out the other side of this? Which is I'm having this realization right now. It's the same feeling I personally get when I'm going through something where I'm moving a trauma pattern or an old subconscious identity like up and out of my system. It feels really disorienting. It feels really upsetting. It feels really ungrounding. And I'm just witnessing that, like, as much as I have been going through the growth and evolution of this massive, massive spiritual awakening and like overhaul of my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
so has our relationship had to alongside that. And so, of course, have you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like every, couple of months or a couple of weeks, like things just get turned completely upside down. And it takes some time for us to like kind of recalibrate of like, okay, these are the experiences we've had. This is our new normal. And this is how, like, we need to choose to come together again and integrate. And I don't know, I feel like it's just made us stronger every time, and just growing alongside of you. I think that trying my best to be the conscious partner is like meeting you where you're at, understanding that I can't always fix or change the situation, that's just part of who I am. I'm always trying to fix, and just being really honest with myself, and like, I just need to be here, like just my presence, being alongside you, and for however long that takes or whatever that means, like just being there, and then we eventually kind of make our way through it.
Yeah. And I think as much as you always want to be the fixer, there's also been so many times of so much despair that like I want you to fix me, that I'm like, please, like, take this from me, fix it in some way. It's literally your job. Like, those words have come out of my mouth in moments of such darkness where it just feels like I need something outside of me to hold this or take this from me or explain it to me and like make it go away. But the reality of any real conscious growth and evolution is that like you couldn't possibly.
Right.
And it's been confusing at times, but also such a pleasure to witness your growth and evolution in realizing that, without me bringing you to it, of just like, I can't, but I will be here and I'll hold solid ground for you until you kind of go through the washing machine of whatever's happening for you right now, which happens a lot as someone who, I don't know if this is your first time listening or if you've been following here for a while, but somebody who went from a very like cookie cutter life way of being, ER nurse, like, into what it is that I am now, which is not, I mean, it's anchored in solid ground, but it is not something that is easily understood without the experience of having gone through it inside of your own body. And something I've also found throughout our relationship is, for so long I wanted you to like follow me. Like I wanted you to be devoted to certain practices and want to go into ceremony spaces and read this book and take this course and do all of these things that I have done for myself. But what I have realized through our relationship and through my relationship with other women is that the way in which a woman experiences an evolution of self and a spiritual awakening is so much different than a man. And there was actually this really deep grief period where I realized like, oh, you're never actually going to be able to get inside of this experience with me the same way that some of like my sisters can literally be like, yep, like have experienced that through my body, or I can see you and I can validate you in that experience. And that was something that really freaked me out for a while. That like, I'm going to grow and expand exponentially into all of these dimensions of consciousness, and that you at some point are not going to be able to relate to me anymore.
Yeah, and I think as an observer, something that always kind of stood out to me is you would have this feeling that you're almost like in it alone, right? I'm going through all of this and I don't have the same like resources and people to talk to because they haven't lived any of this experience, and it's like hard to find that relatability. And I think that was like a point of contention of like, I feel like I'm in this alone. And, you know, alongside you, I'm kind of going on my own journey, right? But at my own pace, because I'm my own person, and, you know, I'm picking up on things as we go along. And I think the most important thing for me was just to, like you said, remain that foundation, right? When you feel like you're blowing in the breeze and you don't know which way you're going, if I am just this rock of presence for you,
Mm-hmm.
that I can always be that grounded place for you to come back home to after all of the feelings of uncertainty or fear are over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like you come back, we sit down, we debrief, we, you know, come up with some answers. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure of my life to be that person for you.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
And I think it's been such an evolution to let go of that idea of what I thought I needed our relationship to look like, right? I think spiritual development in the age of the internet can cause a lot of these traps of comparison where everybody's out there with an opinion and an experience and the way that they believe a relationship is supposed to look, or a conscious partnership is supposed to look. And there's just so much noise, the like comparison that's out there. And it took a really long time for me to get to this place of understanding that it's okay that we are so different,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That like this path that I am walking is my path. It's not meant to be your path, but that our paths are like side by side. And just like you said, you remain that rock.
Mm-hmm.
Where when I was really in it, in like, I don't know if this is going to work if you're not going to follow me,
Yeah.
if you're not going to go to these depths, if you're not going to awaken these things inside of you. I think there came a moment actually that I was speaking to a girlfriend about it, and I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to the depths that I desire to get in relationship if he's not willing to like come with me on my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought to light, she was like, Molly, could you imagine two of you
Yeah.
in a relationship with one another? Like there would be no grounding, there would be no source of structure, there would be like no, like my innate blueprint is so feminine and connected to higher consciousness and like mysticism, and it's just like who I am at my core, and I need somebody who's going to like grab me by the ankle and pull me back down to earth and be like, this is where you live.
Right. No matter how far you go, we're going to come back home.
Yeah.
And this is our baseline.
And I was just so grateful for that advice, for like that. All it took was that, for the realization of like, oh, the chaos that I'm feeling inside of myself going through these experiences, like that times two, neither of us having the like grounded masculine firmness rooted in this reality. And I think that's actually what's allowed us to develop into such a beautiful relationship. And like one of the greatest gifts that you have given me, well, it's taken me time to give to you, as I'm talking about all of the things I thought I needed you to do and be so that we would be okay, is like absolute and unconditional acceptance, no matter what it is that I have ever brought forward to you. And some of it I look back and I'm like, how are you just so like, yeah,
Right.
yeah to that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the balance of everything, right? It's the chaos mixed in with the calmness. It's the questioning and the uncertainty with the certainty.
And I'm just noticing that as you're saying that, you're like, the chaos mixed in with the calmness, the questioning and the uncertainty mixed with the certainty. And every experience we've had where I've come to you mind absolutely blown about some revelation that I'm having, you're just like, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense to me. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just part of my human design or whatever it is, but I mean, thinking back to even when we first got together, I think that there were times where our like personalities or the way in which we move through life, like kind of almost clashed, of like, you know, why don't you want to go out and do the thing? And why aren't you like trying to make all these new friends? And it was so different. And, you know, back then when we were younger and earlier in our marriage, you know, we had no idea all of the like personality baggage that we were both bringing to the table. And it's easy to kind of look at those moments with a younger mindset and say, you know what, like we don't have those things in common. We shouldn't be together. Right. And that's not a mature relationship, right? Like we chose each other almost 9 years ago, right? We've been married for 6, but we chose each other for a reason. And when I choose you, I'm choosing all of you. And that doesn't mean that when things feel inconvenient that I just pull my parachute and I'm out of here, right? Which is, I mean, I've done that in the past, right? I think that it's very common for young people in relationship to that first sign of trouble. All right, I'm out. And I think that just maturing through relationship and through marriage is understanding that, like, hey, we got to remember why we started this. And we are growing alongside each other into becoming a family, right? We were individuals who decide we're just going to do this for the rest of our life. We're going to hang out forever. Right? And that sounds so easy and so fun. But unless you have like mentors or people to speak to kind of give you an idea, you're not prepared for the changing as individuals that we go through over the last 9 years, right? And those changes, we need to change as individuals, and then we need to come back and like mesh as a couple.
Change as a couple,
right.
Like allow the relationship to evolve alongside how much we've been willing to evolve ourselves, or not even willing to, but just like experiencing life itself and evolving in that way. And
just one more point on that. Like, it's a choice, right? And we've talked about this before, but you see an elderly couple that's out there and you look at them and they look so in love, right? And you think to yourself, like, how many times did those two have to choose each other? How many moments in their life could have been the diversion of their paths that instead they decided, like, hey, I chose you for a reason and we're going to figure this out. It's not nearly as scary as it may feel in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And like, I just think that that's a beautiful thing. And I look forward to, it's crazy to say, but now, like, having gone through so many times that felt like they were just ripping the fabric of our relationship away, like, I kind of look forward to those moments now, because like I said, we have these tools in our toolbox, and we're tried and true. Things have come up in our field and we have chosen to go through them
multiple times.
It's like we're gonna make it. We're always going to come out on the other side stronger. It's really just an opportunity and a potential to evolve with each other as a couple, instead of these individual lives that we lived for so long.
Yeah. I learned something early on in my like self-evolution when I started to kind of pour that towards our relationship too, and have these thoughts of like, what if I evolve so much and I change so much and you don't, and that causes us to like go our separate ways, right? And like so desperately not wanting that to happen. And I remember listening in a podcast about the like core of conscious relating being the difference between, let's say this microphone here is an issue, the difference between me sitting on this side, the issue sitting in the middle, and you sitting on the other side, versus the two of us sitting on the same side looking at the issue together. And I feel like I've gone through so many periods of time within my own psyche, within my own system, of like not being able to see that point of view, not being able to see that like it's not you versus me, or me and my wants and my needs that like you can't show up for. It's us. And like, how can I actually learn to consciously communicate what's happening for me inside of my system, and what it is that I do need, and what it is that does feel like is missing, which we're not taught how to relate in this way, right?
No.
Like, we live in such an ego-driven society that so many of my past relationships were like, if I had come to a partner, which I never consciously did anyway, right? And talked about something that I felt was missing or lacking, that's a blow to their ego, right? And then it becomes an argument, right? Of like, well, you did this or you did that and you don't do this for me. And like, and I see that way of relating in so many couples versus the like, hey, this is the experience that's going on inside of my body. This is what's happening and playing inside of my psyche. I need you to be able to hold this with me so that we can move through it together, because if not, I'm going to get so stuck in my egoic opinion of what I think is happening that we're not going to be able to make it to the other side of that.
Yeah. I mean, again, thinking about, being younger and being in those relationships where you don't know what the hell you're doing. But the idea that two people who have lived lives separately for so long are going to come together and everything is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to hit any road bumps. You're never going to have a differing opinion on something. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that just growing and maturing is like, okay, you have a problem or you're upset with something or your needs are not being met. Like, that's not necessarily something that I'm doing. It's just about me meeting you where you're at, and like,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do? What maybe I am not meeting your needs in some way, or maybe I'm showing up to a situation in a way that I could do better,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's literally as simple as like, hey, let's just have these conversations where it's not combative and we're just meeting each other where we're at. How are you feeling? How am I feeling? And like, where are we like we're just missing something together
Mm-hmm.
as a couple versus the you did this or I did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit, as much as we feel comfortable and open to, into like the past year of where that's shown up so much inside of our relationship. I mean, the last time you were on the podcast, we were in Costa Rica, and I was so set on, we're going to be here for like 6 months to a year. I can really see us establishing a life here.
Mm-hmm.
I love the community here. I love the people here, the way of life here. And I genuinely thought, because that was my opinion and my experience, that all I had to do was like get you down there for a couple months, and then it would be like, bam, like, we're in this together. I love this just as much as you do.
Right.
Like, let's have at it. Because I really started to wrap my heart around building a reality and a life down in Costa Rica, like that really being this potential and possibility of a dream that I was allowing to expand and expand and expand inside of my experience,
Right.
without like your consent, really, like without like,
or even just letting me in on whatever was going on in your head.
Yeah. And when we were down there, it's been almost exactly a year since we went down. We were down there for 3 months, and I was in such a high in my experience. Like, I was running the second round of my group program, Embodied. It was going so well. I was meeting people left and right at restaurants and on the beach who were just so interested in my story and what was happening with me, and just like flourishing in so many ways, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And alongside that, I could see that you were not, like, you were, I don't want to say suffering, but like going through a period of a lot of internal like contraction, sure. And seeing myself, my ego, my inner child bumping up against like, I'm having so much fun here. Why aren't you having fun here?
Yeah. Yeah. I got to be honest, that place, I mean, you had tried to express to me how powerful the energy was down there, and I thought I had an idea, but that place ripped me wide open, and it did. I mean, it was a blessing in disguise, because I really dove deep into like my breath work every day, my meditation. I did nothing but work on art while we were down there, but there was just so much contraction around me almost feeling like there was like something wrong with me, that I wasn't having the same experience that you had. Right. And you had been down there. Was that the second or the third time that you had been there? Okay. So you were down there, you met a bunch of amazing friends down there. You had people, like, you had kind of almost like began this like lifestyle down there. Right. And yeah, you kind of had it in your head that like, all I got to do is bring him there and he's going to have the same exact experience that I had, and we're just going to love it, and it's going to be the best. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, we had some moments where, these conversations like almost come to a screeching halt of like, do we want the same things, or are we like on two completely different planets right now? And it was scary.
It was really scary.
Yeah. A lot of tears, a lot of just like very difficult conversations, and a lot of uncertainty.
I remember coming home to the house we were living in at the time from a acupuncture sound bath that I had gone to on like a Tuesday evening after seeing clients all day. Like, it was just my dream reality. Absolutely thriving. And I remember coming home after that experience, and within that experience, something had happened around like my heart chakra and unleashing my voice and being really honest, which I had a hard time doing throughout a lot of my life, being honest about like what I wanted, if it could potentially harm someone else in some way, or if I had it in my head that like my needs and desires were going to hurt somebody else's feelings. And I remember coming home and all of a sudden just like blurting it out, like, what if I see my life and my children and everything that I want being here? Like, because we had already had a couple conversations where you had told me that like you weren't feeling the same, and come December, like you just wanted to go home, and we weren't actually going to live out this 6 months to a year that I had in my head. And I just remember completely breaking down when you looked at me and said like, I love you too much to ever take away anything that you desire, but that's not what I want.
Yeah. I mean, you want, as a partner, as a husband, you want to give your partner the world, right? You want to give them everything that they want. You want to make all of their dreams come true. And I that's how I felt. I loved you so I love you so much, but I never wanted to potentially take something so beautiful from your life if that's what you wanted. And it kind of led us to this place of like, if that's what you want, I'm not going to stop you. I just don't think that this is where my future lives. And that was just a very difficult conversation to have. And it was scary. And I think that, we come to find out later that a lot of what we actually wanted out of where our like forever home would be was very similar. Like there were more things that we agreed on than we disagreed on. But in that moment, I think you build up this expectation of like how you expect things to go. And then when they're met with this like sudden screeching halt of like, well, I don't know if that's what I want. It feels like everything was falling down around you.
Right. It felt like a ripping away. And there was days where we were like, we don't know what we're going to do. Do we, like, we were already planning on going home for the holidays. Do we go home for the holidays? And then like the concept of like trialing a separation and my going to Costa Rica alone and seeing how I felt there on my own, and was like really circling, but none that never felt fully like true. It didn't, it never, there's always been at every single roadblock, at every single turning point, this inner like, but no, like I want this life, but I want this life with you. And if I can't have this life with you, then what is the other potential? What is another possibility that we can begin to build together? But it took us a long time to get to that place. I mean, I remember coming home then in December, and immediately I was ripped into another huge round of like a dark night of my soul of like, do I need to let go of my relationship in order for me to be able to be happy, to choose what I want, to live like the life experience that I really desire? And I mean, that spiral between the two of us went on for almost the entire year.
Yeah. That was a tough period, because I know, like, at least for me, those patterns that you have when you're a younger person, right? Like we were just talking about before, about things coming up, and you almost start to like mentally plan your exit strategy, right? Let me try and put my armor back on that I've been taking off for however long. Let me put some of this back on just in case we need to make this decision that we're not going to do this anymore. Let me try and like lessen the pain or dull it completely. And I think that I mean, I can only speak for myself, but it felt like there were some layers of like walls that began to be put back up between the two of us, in preparation for, God knows what.
Right. Like, I'm not going to continue being this vulnerable and intimate and open and raw with this person if there's a possibility that they're going to leave. And I know that like it was, let's be honest, it was going to be me that was doing the leaving, right? But I felt this pull between like, this or that is really what it came back down
Right.
to. This or that. Is it our relationship and this love that we've built and this intimacy that we have? And we were having some struggles within different aspects of our relationship as well. And I want to circle it back to what you were speaking to earlier, which is like the choice, right? And I don't think that it is often spoken to enough, the amount of times that you have to almost, I don't want to say I put myself to the side because I didn't, right? But like, am I going to choose me and my wants and my dreams, or are we going to build us and our wants and our dreams? And that was like a really big tipping point for me in relating, because up until then, let's be honest, like I did have a kind of immature idea of like what a relationship was supposed to give to me. Right. Like I've always been loving and open and supportive, and like we've always had such a deep friendship. But I noticed throughout that period of time this piece of myself that needed to dissolve, that was like, if I'm not, if you're not doing what I want, if we're not building towards what I want, if I don't get everything that I want, this like bratty inner child that was like, I'm not willing to give anything up. But almost within that like I started to also build back up walls of like, if I have to go off on my own to get everything I've ever wanted, then maybe I am willing to like leave this behind. And that felt so painful. Like I have to speak to, I've allowed myself to go to that place again and again and again and again of actually feeling the sensation inside of my heart and the grief inside of my body of what it would, even just like a micro moment of what it would feel like to have to let you go. And I will say now, being on the other side of all of that, that it's that willingness, both individually and together, to go to those places, to have those conversations, to continue to break down those walls that unconsciously want to start building up, that allowed us to like make it through to the other side of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot of big moments with like little choices where you need to choose each other in these moments. There were any number of times from, being in Costa Rica to being back on Long Island, and the what felt like tumultuous, like chaotic moments of uncertainty. At any point during that, one of us could have just decided, like, you know what, that's it. That's it. We want different things, and we're going to just figure it out. And I think that, like you said, going through that, and we did take a little bit of time to spend on our own. Like you went down to Costa Rica for a bit. You were spending some time in Jersey, and we had these little periods of like, okay, it almost felt like I'm living like a bachelor here for a little while, right? And we were obviously still in contact. It wasn't just like, see you when I see you, and
it was in small spurts,
very small doses. Yeah.
Like I'd go for a weekend or...
Right. Well, I think you were in search of the community that you felt in Costa Rica.
Yes.
Right. You were able to get that in like little doses, micro doses, in whether it was Jersey or, you know what I mean? But those times that we did spend apart kind of put things into perspective of like, this doesn't even feel like I'm living life at 100%.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
if I were to choose that, if I were to actually choose this, what would my life actually look like? Like there was, it's not as simple as just like, oh, I miss you. It was like, there is something missing from me. There's a piece of me that is not here, and my life is going to suffer. And like, I will always wonder if I messed it up. Like we mess up so many things, when we're younger, right? Like they talk about like the one that got away, or, these people that may have been the right ones for you, but you let something either like egoic or just situational to break you guys apart. And now you'll never know. And I just, it never felt like I was living at 100% once we got home and we were going through those struggles. It's like, we are not this connection and this bond that we have always had. It was like severed for a little while, and it was like, I'm not at 100%. And like, our life is meant to be lived together.
Mm-hmm.
And, going through those tough moments and coming back together, kind of like hat in hand of like, we need to figure out how we're going to make this work because we don't have a choice. Like, we're not going anywhere. So, where do our dreams intersect?
Yeah.
And like, let's just focus on that.
Yeah.
And kind of move from that place.
I think for me, the biggest piece of that was most recently, I mean, for anybody's listening, it's currently October of 2024. In July, I started getting these channeled messages of like, you're going to go into a period of stillness and silence and solitude, and you have to be willing to leave everything you thought you needed in order to survive behind. Like, you have to be willing to just answer this call and go and do this thing. And I kept hearing like Costa Rica, Costa Rica, Costa Rica, Costa Rica. And even that scared me because it felt like this like impending separation that we had been potentially playing with all along was like, oh my God, is that what's happening? Like, is that what this is? And when I brought that to you, you were so just like, this is for whatever reason, I feel like this is for us. And like, we don't get to know what comes on the other side of it, but there is a reason that like you have always gotten these intuitive nudges to follow your heart to do these things. There's something in it for you, and there's something in the space for me as well. And that was another big round of navigating deep conversations about what would that look like, because a piece of that was, I feel like I need to take time totally alone, like disconnected from social media, from business, from you, from family, from friends, like having very minimal contact. I had like a few contact points with the outside world during that time so that I could reconcile with the parts and pieces. Now I know like inner maiden, immature aspects of myself, of the way that I was relating, of the things that I wanted to choose outside of relationship, of the trauma that had been stirred up between our relationship. And the way that you met me in that was just like, absolutely, like, go, and we don't get to know, but I have faith and I trust and I believe in whatever's going to happen is what is meant to happen. And that was another period where I did, like, I had moments where I was in Costa Rica staying alone in a home where I was like down on my knees grieving, absolutely grieving the loss of our relationship, but it ended up being the loss of these old patterns of relating and the loss of this old immature inner maiden aspect of me that felt like when the going gets tough, I'm just going to pull the parachute and step out. And this reconciling with knowing that I've almost always unintentionally but subconsciously had one foot in and one foot out.
Yeah.
Right. And it was this period of choosing, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to take both feet out or put both feet in? And how much that was needed for our relationship to evolve to the place where it is now. And again, the willingness of going to that place, answering that call, having no idea what was going to happen on the other side, completely surrendering control, not even knowing what I was really going there for, but knowing these dynamics within our relationship was a piece of that. And it was within, I think we had decided we were going to have like minimal contact. And within like a week and a half of being there, I was like, why aren't you texting me? Like, why aren't you calling me? Yeah. What is wrong with you?
Yeah. I mean, kind of circling back to what we were talking about before of having the tools in the toolbox for when these situations come, right? When you approached me with the idea of, I don't know why, and I don't know for how long, but I feel like I need to go and do this. We have hit these crossroads in our lives so many times. And these decisions, they feel big and they feel scary. And over the course of time, we have gotten better and better and better at the idea of surrender, right? That these things come into our life and into our field for a reason. And you have to make a choice to not necessarily know what it's all going to look like. You're not going to know the outcome. But if you feel in your heart that that's something that you have to do, then you have to do that. So when you approached me with that, it kind of made sense to me that, like, okay, you feel like you need to go and be in some level of solitude and work some stuff out. That gives me the ability to do the same. And I love you enough to just let you go and do that. And I will be here whenever you come home. But if this is what's meant, if this is what the next chapter of our life is supposed to look like, then like, let's just do it.
And we have to face it,
Right.
like, no matter what it is.
Right. Yeah.
And I think so many people will come to crossroads like that in their life, but then not be willing to face it because of the fear of not knowing of what comes out on the other side. Like, I didn't want the outcome to be that our relationship was over, but I had to be willing to accept that reality that had been kind of spiraling between us for literally a year in order to reach the depths I needed to access so that I could get the growth on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's literally the evolution of you as an individual, of both of us as individuals, and the power that we get to then bring into the next stage of our relationship after that is just, it's unbelievable, because I feel like after we went through that, right, we had our time apart, and we had our time to play out mentally and emotionally, like, what the hell would this actually look like? When we came back together, and it was more evident than ever that we're going to do this forever. Yeah. It was like we hit the ground running, and it was such a level up.
Like the expansion that we were experiencing.
Yes, expansion is the perfect word. It was just this explosion of just love and understanding and willingness to go to those places that feel so sticky and so hard. It's like, where are they at? Let's just do it. Let's go in and look at all these things. You're feeling something? Okay, let's sort it out and figure out where we're at. And for me, I felt so empowered of like, it was just this reminder of, you guys are the best team that you've ever experienced. And any time that we have ever put our minds to something, we have always achieved it. Like, we are undefeated in that. Right. And a lot of that is kind of rolling with the punches and, being detached from the outcome, just like trusting and surrendering. But we have always landed on our feet. Yeah. And I think that we just hit the ground running after that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think alongside, again, being down on my knees, surrendering to that grief and reconciling with all of these past relating patterns and where are they coming from, and this like lack of trust in the masculine, this lack of trust in God, this whole like reconciliation process I was going through at that time, it also led me to this beautiful experience of being able to lay with Lexi, my Chinese medicine doctor and dear friend, for 4 different sessions, and didn't even realize that was a piece of what I was going down there for. But immediately as we came together for those sessions, a lot around our conception journey also started to come up. And within this past year of having this spiral within our conscious and our subconscious of these patterns and these way of relating, and what are we going to do, and do we want the same things, and how do we come together, we've also been in our 3rd year of trying to conceive, but we were trying to conceive from this egoic place of like, we've been together for so long, it's time for us to have a baby. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it happening? So like, all of that was going on within the midst of all of this, right? It was like everything that could possibly strangle our relationship was coming at us at the same exact time. And that space apart and that call down there actually became the greatest gift to that journey, which is also exploding ever since I've arrived home. And I have absolutely no doubt that everything that we have gone through in the last year has been the things that have been shaken out of our relationship so that we could consciously create together.
Yeah. I can look back now and just being brutally honest, like, we weren't ready. Yeah. We may have been like mentally ready, but, and like you said, like egoic, like, I want a baby, right? And we do, right? That was never the problem. We always wanted to bring a child into this world. And I think that, we would come back to this this point over and over again that like when it's our time, when it's our time. And it's not easy to choose that month after month after month. At a point you're like, when though?
Yeah.
When is it going to be our time? And sitting here now, with this past month just being so full of love and intimacy and understanding and manifestation, like it makes so much sense to me now why it hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we, like you said, we were trying to create life in this like womb of just absolute chaos.
Mm-hmm.
We needed to find each other again and choose each other again through that storm for there to ever be a chance. And like now that we have created such a perfect environment within our relationship, within our life, to be able to like, there's a safe place for this soul to land now,
Mm-hmm.
if this is the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it has never before been that clear.
Yeah. And I think within that conception journey, there's been times where it's like, yeah, okay, so we decided around 3 years ago that we were ready to start trying. And then that's when I went off of birth control. And when I say we've been trying for 3 years, again, I've been in this deep portal of growth and expansion and uncertainty and transformation. And also looking back, I can see everything that needed to happen inside of my body, inside of my system, to become this like safe haven for a baby. All the traumas I needed to touch down into, all of the things that needed to be shaken out of my system. And I think within those 3 years, there have been so many turning points where it was like, okay, we decided we were ready, but then you would kind of be like, I don't know if we're really ready. And then I would be like, I don't know if we're really ready. We've had big periods of being like, we're just going to stop for a while. I mean, we've gone through a miscarriage together. We've had so many signs and symbols and synchronicities of now I can look back and God just being like, it's not your time.
Right.
But I also think it's been that deep desire to conceive that has been sort of this like this catalyst in continuously digging deep into the work. Like not just why isn't it working and why isn't it happening for us, but also like, okay, while we have this time, how can we get even better? How can we grow even deeper? How can we what gets to be shaken out here? Not just like why isn't it happening? What's wrong with us? But while we have this time and space without a child, because that changes absolutely everything, how can we take this time and use it to the best of our ability to grow and evolve and see ourselves and meet within this transformation inside of our relationship again and again and again. And you don't see it when you're going through it, but sitting in the seat where we sit now, I look back and I'm like, wow, it's all been so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely, something that I had always said to you was that if it doesn't happen this month, we are only going to be more prepared, right? Oh, sorry, it didn't happen this month, but we're only going to be more prepared. And I think for a long time, what I didn't realize was, you hear people talk about, being ready for the baby, right? And it's usually like a financial conversation, right? But the idea that that's the only thing or reason to bring a baby into the world or to not is, I mean, us as individuals, the emotional preparedness and, like you said, the meeting of yourself, not just the idea and the preconceptions of who you are, right, is going deep inside of you to figure out what are the things that I need to be better at, what are the things that I'm proud of, because all of these things, when you bring this child into the world, you're choosing, like, you are going to download these pieces of yourself, good, bad, or otherwise, onto this little soul who is coming with a completely clean slate. And, you're never going to be able to avoid any kind of the negative things that happen, right? It's inevitable, but you can do the absolute best you can to be a like healthy and whole and well-rounded individual and couple, to be this safe place for that baby to land, right? I don't want to download all of my crap and all my self-doubt and self-deprecating things onto this baby, right? I want to be financially stable, yes. Emotionally stable, also yes.
Physically, mentally,
yeah.
spiritually.
Yeah.
And I can wholeheartedly and finally say that while we're in this, we are both now in a phase of such deep devotion to our bodies, to our minds, to our goals, to our wealth. Like, it feels like all of a sudden, we've done so much groundwork in the energetic and the emotional and the spiritual side of things. And now it's like that laid the foundation for all the action we're taking externally now. That feels so good.
Yeah.
Like, I have never before in the entirety of our relationship felt as whole and vibrant and connected and certain of the power that we hold between the two of us. And it's like something that I've always known, but something that needed all that space and time to actualize. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people could potentially miss out on with the expectation that, like, when the going gets tough, I just gotta go.
Yeah.
Or when it doesn't feel like this picture perfect fairy tale, it means that it's not the right one because everything's not going smoothly, where in reality it is those controversies in relationship that cause us to grow. Like, you as my mirror, me as your mirror. It's those things that we bump up against that when we're willing to, again, come together and look at it from this like higher vantage point, that we get the opportunity to grow into more well-rounded, open-hearted human beings, where like I can solidly look back and say that we did not come into our relationship completely open-hearted. We didn't even know what that meant, right? Like, life causes you to close down your heart and to create this persona and seek externally for this idea of perfection, so that you can continue this front that says like, it's okay, I'm okay, everything's okay. But we have broken that down time and time and time again to actually land at this place of expansion now inside of our relationship, where like it really, like, it's so good.
Right.
It's so good, and it's so fertile, and it's so intimate, and it's so loving, and it's so beautiful, and it's unlike anything that I have ever experienced before, because of that willingness we've both had to like turn in and access that from within and pour it forward into.
Yeah. I mean, all of those things that you were just talking about, and like the growth and the excavation and the digging and the figuring and the finding out, it makes me think of like that is our foundation, right? And the foundation needs to be perfect in order for anything to be placed on top of it. You know, you go to a job site and you see just this hole. There's just a hole. And you drive past it day after day after day, and you're like, are they even working on that? Like, there's nothing is changing. And the point is that everything that is happening below ground. And all of the foundation and all of the rebar and the footings, everything is being built when nobody can see it. And they need to do that in order for them to lay even the first board of what is going to be like this growth into what your relationship is going to be. And once the foundation is laid and it's strong and it's secure and we've figured out all of our shit, not to say that there isn't plenty more to do, right? Things will come and they will go, but this base level of getting really acquainted with who we are as individuals and how we live and love as a couple, like, we had to lay that foundation. And once the foundation is laid, you drive past the building and you're like, oh my God, there's 4 more stories today. Like, they throw that thing up because they did it right and they started from square one. And I think that we've done that. Yeah.
It feels like that is the place that we are moving from now.
Yeah.
And then it's like the sky is the limit. And I think that this can be copied and pasted to a relationship that you have within yourself, right? Like, for anybody who's listening, maybe you aren't in partnership, maybe you aren't in that conscious relationship yet that you are desiring. Maybe you're in a period of really wanting to be alone with yourself, but it's like the way that we're we're talking about these experiences that we've been willing to dive into together, we've also had to be willing to do that individually. Now, I think our story is a bit unique. You often hear like heal before you find the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like do the work before you come into relationship. And I think if you have the opportunity to do that, that's really beautiful. But I love that we get to be an example of people who did it kind of the other way around. I mean, when I was in Costa Rica, really moving through it, a big piece of me decided to, or was like called to go back and watch our wedding video. And it had me in absolute tears for like the kids that we were, the like,
we didn't know shit.
yeah, the kids that we were, the love that we had though, and the foundation of friendship that like you've been able to see through and throughout all chapters of our relationship, but also absolutely sobbing as I was looking at myself and I'm like, I'm not even the same woman that you married. And yet you have, and I have continued again and again and again to like, I choose this version and I choose this version and I choose this version. And all of those versions come with a contraction. But then through the conscious choice to stick it out, there is the expansion into deeper and deeper and deeper love. And I used to say all the time after we like found each other and got engaged and got married that I was really sad that I was never going to get to fall in love again because it's like one of my favorite feelings in the world. Yeah. Just like meeting somebody new and having all those butterflies and getting to know each other and having that feeling of falling. But when I get really honest about it, it's like after every contraction into the next expansion, it's like falling in love all over again. And I'm just really grateful to be riding one of those highs.
Likewise.
Right now.
Yeah. It's been a journey.
It's been a journey.
And it's been a beautiful journey.
And it'll continue to be a journey.
Yeah.
As we move into this next chapter of, fingers crossed, parenthood.
We're ready. We're ready.
We're ready. And she's coming.
Yeah, she is.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here, for tuning into a piece of my life, our hearts. My hope, my prayer is that it strikes something within you, that it allows to look at your relationship either to self or to your partnership in a little bit of a different light, and that it inspires you to continue to choose to lean towards and do the hard things together, because it is through that darkness that so much beauty gets to grow. And I wouldn't be who I am, where I am, as confident as I am in all that I am doing and creating and pouring my heart into today if it weren't for you being that expression of unconditional love back to me and choosing me before I knew how to choose myself.
It's an honor and a privilege, and I'll choose you over and over and over again.
I love you.
And I love you.
All right, y'all. I mean, I know I am incredibly biased, but that conversation got me so in my feels. It's been a really hard year of expansion through contraction, and I'm just so grateful for the timing of being able to place that conversation here, feeling on the other side of what felt like so much unknown. So whether it be in relationship to another or just relationship to yourself, if you are navigating the depths of a contraction, if you are facing the void of the unknown, just continue to trust, to lean in, to use your tools, to reach out for help, and know that beyond contraction, there will always come expansion. I'm sending y'all so much love always and in all of the ways. If you haven't already, please, whether you're watching this on YouTube or not, head over to the YouTube channel and hit subscribe. We are currently pouring everything that we have into the expansion of this podcast. And one of the ways you can help this show grow is by subscribing, rating, leaving reviews, because the more listeners we have, the more these platforms will pump these episodes out to more ears. Thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next episode.